Hello. Welcome to Matters of Decorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. We're back to the digital background for now. It's imperfect, but we live in an imperfect world, so we'll make of it what we can for now. I had complaints from my mother, of all people, about the state of the office behind me when I don't use the digital background. Can't say I blame her. It's kind of a disaster, so we'll go with this for a while and see how it works out. While I was in treatment for my cancer and for most of my convalescence, I had a mental exercise I used to visualize defeating the cancer. And that mental exercise came in the form of a character named Uncle Drac. You may recognize it. Uncle Drac's a character I've put way too much time and thought into. And having him in my head during all my chemotherapy sessions, and particularly during the recovery from that, while I was having radiation applied, in my head, he was beating my cancer. And I gotta say, he did a pretty good job because I am cured technically. And I thought I would walk through one of the aspects of the exercises I went through with him. I created Uncle Drac years before that. A father of a friend looked at a Halloween costume I was wearing and told me I looked like one of those Saturday afternoon horror movie hosts. And that kind of just led to the creation of Uncle Drac. Thanks, Tom. And he's evolved over time, but never more so than when I was dealing with the cancer and needed something to focus on other than what was going on with me. And I'm a daydream warrior. I've been daydreaming more than I probably should since I was 12. Maybe a little bit before that, but certainly that's when it really kicked in. And escaping from unpleasant circumstances in my life is kind of second nature to me at this point. So the more mental effort I put into something like that, the better. And the thing that really obsessed me, the thing that really took over my mind, was the fighting style that Uncle Drac used, the martial arts that he incorporated into his own personal style, and what those were, how they worked together, and how he used them. It should come as no surprise. I am a huge martial arts nerd. Enter the Dragon was the movie that my father and I really started to bond over. Well, Star Wars and then Enter the Dragon, in that order. And my father encouraged me to study the martial arts. I did extensive reading on them. And actually, once I got to late junior high school, I had other friends who were interested in the martial arts, who were taking classes and doing some training, and we kind of cross-trained and geeked out over this stuff myself. That was back in the day when you can go to Pier 1 Imports and for $5 buy a bokken, a wooden training sword, which is just a dangerous fecking thing to have in your hands, along with your other friends having that in your hands when you're all martial arts geeks and the movie Highlander has just come out. It's a miracle I'm still alive. I have that fresh realization once a day. But it's been something that I've absorbed over years, and I'm going to talk about 3 different sources of information and a synthesis of that information. Books that you can still find and read, and which I would recommend if you're interested in this sort of stuff. The first one being The Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee. It's not a long book. It's a good read. It's a quick read. Lots of diagrams. Really well written, actually, and explains not only the physical conditioning and the basic move sets of Jeet Kune Do, but the philosophy behind it. And a lot of martial arts, a lot of people ignore the philosophy behind individual styles of martial arts, and they really shouldn't, because the philosophy is one of those places that they draw their strength from. Jeet Kune Do isn't so much a martial art as it is an indexing form for martial art, a conditioning system for being able to use other martial arts. It allows you to incorporate other styles or individual moves from other styles so that you have the physical conditioning necessary to use those styles or use those moves, but you incorporate different things from different styles into your own individual style. Find what works for you and make it work to its best effect. That really appealed to me, and it's always served me very well. So looking into what other styles were available, what there was out there in the world, there's 2 books I got to go to, and they're not academic texts by the strictest sense of the word, but they are right scholarly pieces of writing. First, GURPS Martial Arts 3rd edition. It's been through a number of editions. There's a 4th edition version. There was a 2nd edition of the 3rd edition book. GURPS is weird. But that first printing of GURPS Martial Arts 1st edition for the 3rd edition of GURPS, there is just this astonishing variety of martial arts techniques and styles from all across the globe, and a really interesting write-up on the basis of those and what move sets they incorporate. Likewise, the other book I would recommend if you're interested in stuff like this, another role-playing game book, the Pacific Rim Sourcebook for Cyberpunk 2021. I almost said 2077. Pacific Rim Sourcebook, Cyberpunk 2021, which has on not just information on what the Pacific Rim is like in the year 2021, but also the comprehensive martial arts rules for that system, and along with that, just a smaller selection of styles than GURPS Martial Arts had, but a more detailed description of those styles as they were. And a couple of different ones, things you wouldn't found in GURPS. Those were not my sole source of information about the martial arts involved, but they were, again, my index for what was out there, what to look for, what to study, and to give me an idea of which ones I would actually find interesting personally, what would work for me. And they led me to study a number of different things. Jeet Kune Do, obviously, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Aikido, little karate, because I had friends who learned karate, a couple of forms of Kung Fu. Wing Chun is a really good, solid, basic Kung Fu, and then some of the fancy animal style stuff, which, works really well in Saturday afternoon matinee kind of stuff, but still has interesting philosophy behind a number of them. And various subsets and styles of the various styles of Kung Fu. A really complex world of athleticism and artistry, and I really, really dug into Okinawan martial arts, mostly because of the weapon forms. You got to know, I'm a big fan of nunchucks and kama and all those farm implements that were bent to the task of defeating people with swords. So when I tried to devise how Uncle Drac fights, I had just this huge laundry list of stuff that I wanted him to be able to do, but I wanted to narrow it down. Bruce Lee once said, I do not fear the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks. I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. So you can learn 50 styles, but you won't be good with any of them necessarily, unless there's a lot of crossover and you're just learning the same thing from a bunch of them. So one of the things Jeet Kune Do is really good for is giving you an idea of what your rock-solid basics are and sticking to styles that teach you those rock-solid basics or variants on your basics. So how would Uncle Drac fight? And Uncle Drac's fighting style came from 2 different things. One, it had to look good. He was the hero in my head. Well, the anti-villain in my head. And it had to look good. It had to be flashy. It had to look like he knew what he was doing and be competent. But at the same time, I was in physical decline. I wasn't very strong. I was starting to get the feeling I was not going to be strong again. And well, I've developed osteostatic intolerance. I can't stand up for very long. So I wanted something that theoretically, if I ever got the chance to film as Uncle Drac, that I might be able to do at least some of the movesets. Yeah, stuntman for the rest of it, whatever. Um, huh. So it had to be something that would look good and have some flashy moves, but at the same time be a gentle style, something that I could adapt to my own personal use day to day, which is a really interesting combination of things to try and work out. So when it comes to Uncle Drac's dramatic style, one other thing I need to discuss. There is an artificial distinction in a number of schools of thought about the martial arts between what's known as hard styles of martial arts and soft styles of martial arts. A hard style martial art, punches, kicks, solid contact. You're blocking attacks as they come in and meeting strength for strength, trying to use your strength to overcome your opponent's strength. A soft style of the martial arts does not match strength for strength, but gives you the edge on redirecting strength directed at you. You do not meet it with your strength. You allow the opponent's strength to meet itself. You let them defeat themselves by guiding their limbs and locking their arms or limbs so that they can only exert stress against their own joints. And hard styles tend to be athletic and hard and look kind of spectacular. Soft styles look graceful and slow in some cases, even if they are actually anything but. When you think of a hard style, you look at most kung fu movies or a Bruce Lee film or the stuff that action heroes did from the 80s on, where it was all hard crashing, punching, kicking, headbutts, all knees and elbows, getting into someone's face and just ripping it off. When you think of soft styles, I think the best example I can give you is you really need to see a movie called Kung Fu Hustle. There's a character in there who spends the first half of the movie just getting his ass beat. That's the landlord of Pigsty Alley. And you think that he's just the comic relief character for most of it because he's the victim of domestic abuse and occasionally appears to almost deserve it and is just constantly beat up on until he actually has to step into a conflict. And what he's doing is not absorbing the blows, but redirecting the energy. Even when he gets into a much larger fight where he's obviously a combatant, he's not moving as fast as his opponent, but his slow and graceful moves are sufficient to deflect his opponent's attacks. Some schools of thought say a martial art style has to be either hard or soft. I prefer, and I think it's more of a Jeet Kune Do approach to look at martial arts and say your style can and should incorporate both of these. There is strength to be found from both a hard approach and a soft approach. And that's kind of how I looked at how Uncle Drac did things. Solid ground layer of Jeet Kune Do because, again, Jeet Kune Do is less a martial art and more an indexing form for incorporating other martial arts into a single style. But after that, Tai Chi. Tai Chi is more than just a national exercise program for China. It is really, really good for health. Tai Chi is the art that I can currently use probably most effectively because I have the strength and endurance for basic Tai Chi practice. And it is slow and it is graceful, but that constant use of personal resistance, almost an isometric exercise when you're doing the basic moves of Tai Chi, when you're practicing and going through the move sets, it's really good for building core strength. for building strength in general. Really good for the core. And you find that when you have practiced this slow exertion of strength, and often using your own strength to slow your own motions, making your muscles work against each other to maintain stability and balance, that once you've practiced that for a while, you can just let the muscles flow the way they want to and go for very quick, very decisive, very fast attacks that, almost, it's one of those things where you have developed the power, you have just not used the speed, but you've been developing that as well. So that seemed a very good basis for Uncle Drac because I could do it. Aikido, a little bit of that in there. One of those foremost styles for directing other people's energy. More the philosophy of Aikido, the mindset that you walk into it with, that when someone throws an attack, they're giving you a gift. And being a gracious receiver of gifts, you don't want to deflect the gift or push the gift away. You want to accept the gift and place it where it will do you the most good. It is, after all, your gift now. Whether it is a flower or a meal or a punch or a kick, that is yours now. It has been thrown at you, it has been directed at you, it has been given to you. And it is only gracious to accept it and put it someplace you would rather have it. So you combine those things, but Uncle Drac doesn't just flow, he also crashes. So Wing Chun Kung Fu has a wonderful philosophy that you've got two hands, you've got 2 feet, you can throw attacks and you can defend yourself, but isn't it so much better if your defenses are also attacks and your attacks are also defenses? That you are not just doing one thing at a time, but you're being efficient and fast about things. If you've ever seen I highly recommend the movie Ip Man with Donnie Yen. Oh God, it's astonishing. Based on the instructor who originally taught Bruce Lee, and just watch Donnie Yen movies in general. They're fucking amazing. But Wing Chun gives you a nice core of hard style that gives you the ability to use soft philosophy as well. That attack comes in, well, what are you going to do with it? Whatever you want. It's about developing speed and accuracy and a certain amount of grace and balance, because if you can retain your balance, retain your stance, retain your footing, you retain control. Uncle Drac is an anti-villain. He does not play by the rules. He cheats. He cheats quite often. And how do you cheat in a fight like that? Most forms of Kung Fu have subsets. They have different tweaks that you can apply to the Kung Fu form. So you might practice Mantis style, which is a really good style. There used to be a school that teaches it in Torrance. I hope it's still there. I had hoped to visit it someday. I don't think it's going to happen now, but Mantis style is really kind of fascinating. But if you have studied Mantis style to the point where you've got a solid grip on the moveset, you might be able to move into drunken Mantis style or drunken boxing, the drunken subset of an art. It seems very cinematic. You might be familiar with Jackie Chan's Drunken Master. The release in America is actually the second Drunken Master movie. The first one was made way back in the 80s. I actually prefer the first one, to be honest with you. But a drunken style, it takes a lot of practice and intense training and control, and it is a real challenge to your balance. But it's a great way to build up core strength. but it's built around not just using the style as it is written or in the manual, but you throw in some acting and you throw in some weaving, and act drunk. Some of the best practitioners of it in history actually kind of became alcoholics because they would drink and make people believe that they were off their game. They were tipsy. They were 3 sheets to the wind and probably couldn't fight that well, but those moves were all very deliberate and very well placed and very graceful until they crashed. And one of the things about drunken kung fu, as well as a number of the other subsets, is your entire body, all of your body mass becomes part of your weapon. So you might stumble into your opponent or throw yourself on them to some degree, force them to have to deal with your mass, and while they're dealing with your mass, you still got hands and feet to throw. And that seemed very Uncle Drac to me, very deceptive in one hand, but also very efficient. Very, I'm just going to move through. I'm going to make you deal with me, and now here we are. And because of certain aspects of Uncle Drac's origins and how his character evolved, particularly around the time I was getting sick, there are animal styles that are based on behaviors and movements of certain animals. You can usually tell by the hand position, you know, leopard, tiger, crane, snake. But not all of the animals that Kung Fu styles are based on are actual animals. There is a very strong style that's Dragon Kung Fu, where you are emulating the jaws of a dragon with your hands and arms. Your occasionally the jaws or the claws or the wings. Your feet become the dragon's legs and the dragon's tail, and you are directing more force. There's a lot of the first Mortal Kombat film when Liu Kang goes in for that double punch at the end, and that's the maw of the dragon. You can even see the teeth when he has the hands spread out a bit there, until he goes in and contracting your fingers into a fist in the midst of a punch actually gives you a little bit extra oomph. So that also seemed to work out in stages. You don't go in with everything all at once. You swap out. You change your rhythm and change your style to keep your opponent guessing. So how would Uncle Drac approach a fight? Well, he'd start off with Tai Chi, perhaps even drunken Tai Chi, to move in, keep his opponent off balance, and get a measure. Just start maneuvering their energy to other places than himself so he can see how they are fighting and whether or not that's going to work. And if that creates an opening, you switch to Wing Chun and start to crash, and throw the blows where they're going to do the most good while you are covering yourself from any reprisals. And if that is insufficient, then you can slip over to something more akin to Dragon Kung Fu, where you have an entirely different moveset, and everything that your opponent has tried to figure out about your fighting style has gone out the window. And if that fails, then you can move to a drunken subset of Dragon, which is very hard to deal with if it's done right. I'm still practicing. I practiced what physicality of this style I could actually work on, trying to make it my personal style. I'm not strong enough to do Wing Chun properly. I do not have the endurance to do drunken style for more than a minute or so. It takes an awful lot of energy, but practicing it has helped me build myself back up to at least where I'm at right now. Uncle Drac has been a companion and a stand-in. He's been a focus of meditation, but he's also kind of been an instructor for me, going through the process of working up how he fights, what his movesets are, how the styles flow together, and how he utilizes them. It was a very good meditation. It really helped see me through. I really hope I can animate some of this someday. If I can't do it in front of a camera, and there's quite a few things I can picture in my head that I'm never actually going to be able to pull off. If I had a wire team, I wouldn't be able to pull a lot of this stuff off. But I might be able to animate it one of these days. I keep trying and see if I can use some of the new tools that have come out to make that work a little bit better. But I have not gone into that much detail for every so often I go into that much detail for a character. I will usually just lay it down to one or two styles, or where did their training come from? Is it mostly American boxing or American kickboxing or military personal defense, which in America is basically Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which I did study when I was in college. That was fucking fascinating and probably the best health I've been in my life. But that's the process you go through. You develop a knowledge of the styles that you want to incorporate into characters as you go down the line. And then as you figure out who the character is, part of who a character is how a character fights. I've talked about how integral combat is to most role-playing games, thanks to the origins of role-playing games and how they've evolved over time. And your D&D monk, and some of this is one of the things I like about D&D 5th edition, and not just the monk, but the battle master subclass of the fighter. That's a really, really good way to analyze a character's fighting style, their how they approach battle, not just what mechanics they are using, but how they view it philosophically. It's really actually kind of important. Uncle Drac, again, he cheats. He does not fight fair. He refuses to fight people on their own grounds because he has not gone through all of this training just to sacrifice victory for style and honor. That's for better people than him. He just needs to be going home at the end of the day. So he will crash into people. He will punch people in places where people will tell you shouldn't punch folks. He'll take maneuvers that other martial artists will eschew because it would get them thrown out of a tournament, but he's not fighting in a tournament. He's usually fighting for his life. And no, I'm not going to talk about those techniques today. Maybe another time. And if nothing else, it kind of formed the martial art that I used mentally to fight all the things that came along with the cancer and the cancer treatments and the recovery. Meditation is in and of itself an important skill, and having things like that to meditate on in times where things get bad, like not being able to eat or drink anything for 3 or 4 months. That was rough. But having something that you can focus your mind on, something you've really studied, something you care about, something that might never actually see the light of day, but you have this complete concept in your head of something that made you happy and carried you through. Thank you for following me along with this particular rant. I do get into my martial arts, and I'll probably talk more about subjects like this pretty soon. It's really heavy in my head at the moment. I've got some stuff I'm writing that I would like to finish up, and this is helping me work some of that stuff out. I'm Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me. I'll see you next time on the next Matters of Decorum. And now, over to Uncle Drac for the outro. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy this video, give it a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If there's any other topics you would like to hear Scott talk about, questions you'd like him to answer, subjects you'd like him to cover, please leave a comment down below. He will love getting your comment and you will love leaving him one. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, why not? This channel is awesome. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you do, you might also want to hit the little notification bell so you're alerted when these videos become available. If you would like to support this channel in a more substantial manner, we invite you to hit us up at the Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum. And consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows us to create better content more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.